Welcome to Decode, a podcast that delves into the complex world of K-12 computer science education, highlighting the significance of storytelling in comprehending educational data.
As we actually had been speaking with lots and lots of superintendents about, obviously, computer science. I run PyTop, which is a computer science and robotics education company. And the word equity just continuously came up, and we're just trying to figure out what's happening with the whole disparity of enrollment in computer science. And there's lots of access, actually, in terms of, tons of legislative mandates requiring schools to offer computer science, yet the enrollment is low. And then when you look at the breakdown of enrollment by gender and race, there's just a massive disparity. And so as we started talking with people about that, we got different answers from everybody, and it was interesting, and they're all valid, but everybody's got kind of different backgrounds, different lived experiences, and so we just started having these candid conversations with people about, what is your experience and rationale behind some of the data. And so I'm here with Steve Popper, who is the Chief Academic Officer of Democracy Prep, and really, you're becoming a national charter network at this point, delivering some really good results for students. You want to just give us a kind of a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are, and some things about Democracy Prep?
Of course, absolutely. So first off, thank you so much for having me on. I'm Steve Popper. I'm our Chief Academic Officer at Democracy Prep. I started as a special education teacher years back, and I feel like I'll always be a teacher at heart, no matter what the title says. And then ultimately started one of our first high schools in Harlem, Democracy Prep Harlem High School, and then moved over into our central office to become an assistant superintendent, and now get to be our chief academic officer. And when I think about that role, it's really about making sure that the overall holistic student experience for our students and with our families is a truly enriching and excellent one, from curriculum to special education services to comp science first.
So that's, and you mentioned families. I mean, one of the key differences, or I don't know if it's a difference, but it's a focus for you at Democracy Prep is engaging your families. How does that happen? Because I actually heard several years ago at this conference, Michael Moe, who's one of the founders of the conference and GSV, he said what was it? He said one of the most the highly correlated areas of success of a student is parental involvement. Yeah. So if you want to be successful in life, make sure you choose very good parents.
Yeah.
Well,
you can see it that way. Yeah.
But so obviously it's an important factor. How do you engage with your parents? How do you everybody wants to engage with the parents. How do you guys do that?
I mean, I think our educators take the concept of family engagement incredibly seriously. And the way we see it is it's not just top-down communication, it's true partnership. And that means that our educators are constantly reaching out to parents and guardians of our students, and understanding that you have to take that from an asset-based standpoint. And so the first thing is that our educators in training, when they first get their onboarding, one of the first things that we talk about is that all of our students have incredible strengths, but also our parents and our guardians and our family members are the true experts about their own children. And so that is the first premise and assumption that you go into every single conversation you have with a parent, with a guardian, with a family member. And we do a ton of outreach. Every single one of our students has what we call an academic advisor, and they're charged with making sure that they do regular engagement, regular communication, so that there's that school-based expert on each child, and they're constantly reaching out to provide updates on academic data, grades, but also how behavior is looking from elementary to middle and high. And so over the course of each school year, there's a really strong connection that is forged between the advisor, the student, but then also the family.
Well, so here we are at ASU GSV, and the theme is AI, and it's kind of interesting when you think about the approach that different schools are taking to AI, and some schools are banning AI, some are gradually adopting the kind of policy framework that Code.org has put out, and teach AI. How are you guys thinking about it? And we're talking about parents, right? And engagement. They're a key part of that. Is there a parental factor in there as well?
Sure. I mean, in terms of AI at Democracy Prep, I mean, the first thing is that there are some folks who feel like, oh, you have to take sort of a punitive approach to this. There's going to be a ton of negative outcomes that comes from this. Yeah. Our approach and my approach is very much that this is coming. It's actually not just coming. It's here. Yeah. We don't have a choice. You can't sort of quote unquote ban it, so to speak. You have to understand that it's coming, and then make sure that we set our students up to actually benefit from it. We see AI as we're talking about equity here. We see AI as an inherent equity issue, because if we don't make sure that our students have some level of access to this, within boundaries, of course, in reasonable ways, with clear policies and clear framework for do's and don'ts, we've got to make sure that our students actually have access to this. So existing gaps, opportunity gaps in education, don't widen, but they actually continue to close. So that's the big picture.
And where do you start at Democracy Prep around AI? Because I've been talking with lots of educators about AI over the past year, and the starting point for some people is AI is only used to cheat on essays. I think you've mostly gotten past that with most people, but what's the pitch you give? Because with it's a tough job to be a teacher today, right? Think about like the past, 10 years. You got Google Classroom, you got cheap Chromebooks, and then suddenly you're adopting all this new technology. I mean, to be a teacher, there's no write your lesson plan and use that for the next 10 years. Yeah. Every single year, it's a whole re-education process. And then you thought you were catching your breath, and then COVID came along, and now you got to learn how to teach remotely, and now we got AI. Like, how do you convince the teachers that this is something that they should embrace rather than yet another thing that I got to re-educate myself on?
First topic, couldn't resonate more. Education is it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. But I think what we started with was actually, like, in the same way that we give all of our students a diagnostic assessment, we did a diagnostic assessment with our adults of, do you know what this is? How often do you use it in your personal life? Right. Also in your professional life as an educator? And then if not, why not? And so what we started there was understanding that some people are using it and some people are completely unfamiliar with it. Yeah. And for the folks who are unfamiliar, that's where some of the skepticism comes up, because it's the other. They don't necessarily know as much about it. And so it actually started by just doing that diagnostic. I think from there, where we're going next is making sure that we're developing extremely clear policies for adults, but then also for our students, and equipping our adults to be able to execute some of those policies as well. So that's where we started. But then again, in terms of the pitch, it's AI as an equity issue for us, because again, we want to make sure that our students have every possible access to this, and that when we see AI as an organization, of course, there's got to be boundaries. There's got to be certain things that are not allowed. You can't just kind of rip off any essay for a literature class or anything. Sure. But we've got to also make sure that from that equity lens, that those gaps that already exist in education don't widen, because our students just don't have the opportunity to experience.
So what's the low-hanging fruit for your students and starting to teach them about AI? Where do you start with them to show them, look, this is actually something cool and exciting that we can do really neat stuff, like very it's differently than we had before.
Very concretely, very simply, at Democracy Prep, we have a graduation requirement for all of our high school students that is called a Change the World project. And the Change the World project is essentially, pick an issue that you really care about that is related to social justice, to society. You do a ton of research on it. You have to write a 15 to 20 page paper on it. And then you also don't just write about it. You actually do something about it in the community. So we've had students do incredible things like raise money for a particular issue that they're incredibly passionate about, or run a panel of experts in the community to educate the community about their particular issues. So as you can imagine, when a junior or a senior is just brainstorming, what topic do I even want to get started with?
AI, perfect tool, right?
Start with
generate ideas.
And that's not a bad thing, right? It's not that you're stealing someone else's idea. You're just getting the thought process going. So as we've continued to hone and sharpen our Change the World course and offerings, we've begun to empower students to actually use that for brainstorming purposes.
Yeah.
That then they can say, oh, this idea is the one that I want to really go on to. And then they don't need AI to continue getting there, but it got their brain going on.
All right, so talk to me about how the education process could change or might change, and maybe at Democracy Prep with regards to AI, right? Because when I think about AI, I like to think about jobs, right? And like how the job will change, therefore how we're going to educate our kids to use the AI. But I mean, AI is great at memorizing things, so we don't need to do that anymore. It's great at repetitive tasks, but not very good at critical thinking and collaboration and creativity. And yet we've got Bloom's taxonomy telling all the teachers that we should start with remember stuff, and then like at the very, very like end of the whole education process, we'll get to the creativity. How do you invert that and start using AI to just do the stuff that we don't need to do anymore, and then focus on the important things?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with, we just talked about, Stanley, how everything is constantly changing in education, and it's a very challenging time to be a teacher. And so why not leverage AI literally and concretely just to save educators time? So many of our teachers spend enormous amounts of time on things that AI can actually automate for them. So just as a specific example, some of our teachers plan meetings every day. AI can literally draft an agenda for a meeting if you just type something really quickly into ChatGPT or whatever your source of choice is. And instead of a 20-minute task, maybe that took you 3 to 5 minutes, and you have an additional 15 minutes to plan a better lesson for tomorrow, to make that family phone call. When we talk about family engagement, to actually have more time for those things that matter deeply, or just to get 15 more minutes of sleep.
I love the approach. It's like, what's in it for me is, wow, that's great. Well, you traveled all the way across the country to this conference that's focused on AI. What are you hoping to get out of this, or bring back to your school around AI? What's your experience been so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic just talking to different educators, and I think we're in the phase now where we're past that phase of like, are we going to do this at all? And it's very much, how are we going to do it? And so just grabbing best practices from other networks, from other districts, from incredibly smart and committed people. Talked to so many folks the last couple of days who are starting to develop out those policies and those practices as well. That's where we are. So just really sharing and stealing those best practices together.
Yeah. Well, great. It's a pleasure to speak with you about this. Really grateful that you took the time to talk with us, and wish you all the best at the conference.
Great to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay.
Thanks for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We will see you next time on Decode.